Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you are doing great. In today's video, we are going to learn how to move a player using move position in Unity. Now, there are multiple ways to move an object in Unity. You can directly change its position, you can use translate, you can apply forces, and you can also use move position. Each method has its own purpose. Move position is useful when you are working with a rigid body and you want movement that works properly with Unity physics system, while still give you precise control over where the player movement. So let's see how we can implement it. First, let's create a new C# script. I will name it player movement and attach it to my player object. Now the first thing we need is a variable to control the movement speed. This value will determine how fast our player moves. So I am going to write this line. Public float speed is equal to 5f. This variable is called speed. If we increase the value, the player moves faster. If we decrease it, the player moves slower. Next, we need access to the rigid body component, because move position is a rigid body function. Without a rigid body, we won't be able to use it. So let's create a variable for that. Private rigid body RB. This variable will store the rigid body attached to our player. Now we also need a variable to store the movement direction that comes from player's input. So let's create another variable, private vector3 movement. This variable will hold the direction in which the player wants to move. At the moment our rigid body variable is empty, we need to get the rigid body component from the player object. The best place to do that is inside the start function, because start runs once when the game begins. So inside start I am going to write this. Void start RB equal to get component rigid body. What this line does is it looks at the object the script is attached to, finds the rigid body component and stores it inside the RB variable. Now our script has access to the player's rigid body. Next we need to read the player's input. For that, we will use the update function, because input should be checked every frame. So let's create a update function. Inside update, we need to read horizontal and vertical movement input. So I am going to write these two lines. Float horizontal equal to input.getAxis horizontal. Float vertical equal to input.getAxis vertical. The horizontal axis controls left and right movement, while the vertical axis controls forward and backward movement. These values change automatically when the player presses movement keys. Now that we have the input values, we need to convert them into a movement direction. In Unity, directions are represented using vector 3. A vector 3 contains 3 values, x, y, z. X represents left and right movement, y represents up and down movement, z represents forward and backward movement. Since our player is moving on the ground, we don't need any movement on the y-axis. So I am going to create a movement vector like this. Movement is equal to new vector 3 of horizontal, 0f, vertical. Now the movement variable contains the direction the player wants to move. The next step is to actually move the player. Since move position works with rigid body physics, we should use it inside the FixedUpdate instead of update. The reason is that Unity performs physics calculation inside FixedUpdate, so movement becomes more consistent. So let's create the FixedUpdate function. Inside the FixedUpdate function, we are going to use move position. So I am writing this line. rb.movePosition of rb.position plus movement into speed into time.fixedDeltaTime. Let's understand what's happening here. First, rb.position gives us the current position of the player. Then movement into speed calculates how far we want to move. After that, time.fixedDeltaTime makes sure the movement remains consistent regardless of frame rate. Finally, we add the movement to the current position and pass the result into move position. This tells the rigid body to move to that new position. One thing I really like about move position that we are not directly teleporting the object to a position frame every frame. Instead, we are letting the rigid body handle the movement through Unity physics system. This usually gives smoother and more reliable results when working with rigid body based objects. At this point, our script is complete. Now go back to the Unity and make sure your player object has both rigid body component and this player movement script attached. Enter the play mode and press the movement keys. You will notice that the player moves smoothly using move position. You will often see this method used in character controllers, enemy movement systems, top-down games, and many other situations where developers want direct movement control while still working with rigid body physics. And that's the basic idea behind move position in Unity. I hope this explanation helped you understand not only how to use move position, but also how we use it. And if you found this video useful, just stay tuned to our channel.